Welcome to Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. On this episode, I spoke with curator and musician Jonathan LeVine of Jonathan LeVine Projects. Oddly enough, we are both based out of Rutherford, New Jersey. Enjoy.
What's going to be this? Us just talking. I mean, you got to do a proper reference to beginning, don't you?
No.
Okay.
I like it very casual.
All right.
So what was I asking you?
My name's Jonathan LeVine. I live here in Rutherford, New Jersey.
Yeah, what do you do?
What do? I mostly sell art for a living.
Mostly.
Still? Yeah, I kind of consider myself a creative entrepreneur. That's what I call myself these days. Or an arts entrepreneur, I guess. I don't really. Yeah, I work in the arts, the visual arts, as an entrepreneur in a variety of capacities. As you know, although Podlandia.
Yeah.
Is that what we're calling it?
Yep.
Out in Podland, podcast world?
Uh-huh.
Don't know, but I used to own an art gallery.
Jonathan LeVine
Gallery. I owned it for 18 years, but at one point it was called Tin Man Alley, and that was in New Hope in Philadelphia. Then it was Jonathan LeVine Gallery in New York, and that was in New York for 12 years, and it was in Jersey City for 3 years, but I changed the name to Jonathan LeVine Projects.
Why'd you change the name?
Because I knew that the industry was changing, and I didn't want to be locked down until like this idea of like just that we just were whatever people's perception was of a gallery. It sort of gave us more freedom, and that is still what my business is under. It's Jonathan LeVine Projects. That is my business.
So there was 3 different names, 3 chapters.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, there was 3 chapters.
So what was the first chapter?
The first chapter. You don't know any of this about me, do you?
No, I do to a certain degree. I know the aesthetic.
So the first chapter, there's actually 4 chapters. There's a fourth. There's a would it be like what's the one before Star Wars? The prequel?
There's 3 prequels, yeah.
Yeah, there was a prequel.
The Phantom Menace?
You know what? I don't really
know.
Yeah,
that's a 9-part.
I've seen all the Star Wars movies, but I'm not like a total Star Wars.
Yeah, I am, but it's 9 chapters.
There's a prequel.
Yeah.
And the prequel was from about 1994 to 2001. That's when I opened my first gallery called Tin Man Alley, which was in New Hope, Pennsylvania. Prior to me opening that, I was an independent curator, predominantly in New York City, and I used to curate mostly at CBGB's gallery.
Really? I didn't know they had a gallery.
They did. They had a place next to the club called 313 Gallery, and it was actually larger than CBGB's, and it was 2 floors, and during the day it was a gallery, and it was giant. It was like 4,000 square feet, and then downstairs was giant, and there was another bar, and they used to make pizza, and that's a whole other conversation about the CBGB's, but and Hilly Crystal, who was the owner. But I would curate. I curated about 5 shows a year there over a period of time, and during the day it was a gallery, and then at night they'd have bands play, but it was or they'd have parties, but usually the bands would be acoustic. They wouldn't be like next door, like punk rock bands and rock bands and things like that. Yeah. So I curated out of there for a long time. I also curated I used to curate out of Maxwell's in Hoboken.
Yeah.
And I used to curate out of occasionally at Max Fish on Ludlow Street, which is no longer around. Just these sort of alternative spaces, because I was in my mid to late 20s, and I had no money, and that's what I had access to. And I was showing work that was not particularly wasn't mainstream. It was super underground, and I had no money, so like that's what was available to me.
Were you making art, or you've never made art?
No, I have an art degree. I've got 2 art degrees.
In what?
I have a degree from Montclair State in sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
And this is interesting. You know me for a long time. You don't know much about me. And I also have a degree in graphic design.
Mm.
And I was making art up until I was about 30. And I sort of made work similar to what I show I ended up showing at my gallery, though I'd venture to say I was a good crafts artist. I was an okay artist. I also drew comics, which I wasn't particularly good at, but I liked doing it. That's why when I first met you and you were selling comics, and I was like, oh, cool, I knew about that scene. And, it's just something at the time, all through my 20s, I should say, I played music. I play in a band, and I was playing in a band then. I played the drums, and I was curating art shows, and I was making art, and I was doing odd jobs, kind of like you. And before I opened my first gallery when I was 32.
Mm-hmm.
So that was sort of had this pre to opening the gallery, and at that time, a lot of those people, I gave Shepard Fairey his first solo show at CBGB's gallery in 1998. And I also worked with Ron English there. Do you know Ron English?
McDonald's.
I've known Ron since I'm 26 years old. But that's when the scene that I'm involved in, which is like the juxtaposed street art scene, was super, super underground. So that was then when I was 30 and I was living in Jersey City, I decided that I didn't want to be a poor starving artist, which I was. And I moved back to my parents' house, and I started working at a bagel shop. My friends owned a bagel shop, and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And after doing that for about 1.5 or 2 years, my parents helped me open my first little gallery in this basement in New Hope, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, why New Hope?
Well, basically what happened was Trenton is not far from, it's really not that far from New Hope. And I was originally trying to start, my mother was interior, she used to be interior decorator, not a particularly good one, but it was her thing, her passion. And I was kind of like, maybe we can open up a shop for you of like home decor and stuff like that. So she was basically she was like, I'll help you open a business. And the original Tin Man Alley, my first gallery, was like half a toy store, half home decor, and half an art gallery. And I essentially set it up as a partnership with my mother. And she did not, I wanted to go to Philly because I couldn't afford New York. And my plan was like, I'm going back to Trenton. Maybe I'll try to open a gallery in Philly because it's cheaper. It's a major city. New York's too expensive. I don't come from a wealthy family. I come from a super I grew up really kind of working class, and then we were kind of middle class, but my parents, they don't have any money. And so she's like, well, I hope you do it. We created this agreement and we opened the business, and immediately she and I got in a big fight. She wasn't in the business anymore.
I was going to say, that's quite to go into business with your mother.
Yes, my mother's your typical like overstepping boundary type Italian American mother.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I adore her and we have a great relationship, but that just wasn't working. And so that's where I started, and it was cheap. It was really cheap. My rent was $500 a month for like 500 square feet. So that's like dirt cheap. And New Hope, it's this big tourist town, and half the business was toys. It was collectibles. So like at the time, the art I was showing wasn't selling.
Yeah.
Like if you came to the gallery back in 2001, 2002, 2003, you could have purchased a Shepard Fairey or Ron English off of me, or a variety of other artists, for nothing.
Give me a number.
Oh, I don't know. Like you could buy a Ron English painting from me back then for $500, and it's worth $5,000 now.
Yeah.
You could have come and bought a Shepard Fairey painting off me back then for $3,500. It's maybe worth $50,000 now.
Yeah. But no one was buying
the
work.
No, they weren't buying much, and they certainly weren't buying enough for me to make a living off of it.
So that's Tin Man Alley.
Mm-hmm. And
How'd you get that name?
Well, what happened was, so we're in New Hope, and it's like we're in this building we were in. It was like it's weird. Somebody built a small office building in New Hope, and New Hope's really small, and it didn't work. So what they did is they rented different businesses in it, and one was there was a tattoo shop, there was an antique store, there was a tarot card place, or like that sold that kind of metaphysical type books and stuff. Downstairs in the back, there was 2 spaces. Mine was a space that had no storefront, and the one behind me did have a storefront. They sold Jerry Garcia art, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but you had to walk down these alleys on both sides to go down these stairs, and it was kind of hidden. And I was going to call it Tin Man because I was selling tin robots.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
All these retro. I used to sell a lot of reproduction tin toys. I used to sell like 100 different robots, and my stepfather was like, "You should call it Tin Man Alley after Tin Pan Alley."
Right.
Tin Pan Alley. Do you know what that is? Tin Pan Alley?
No, but I know it's a saying of some
Tin Pan Alley was like this street where like back in the day in the music industry where people would basically go and get people to write songs for them. They were songwriters, and they would, there's a lot of people that became famous did that initially. They would write songs and there was this one street in New York City that was all these buildings full, all these writers, and that's Tin Pan Alley.
Gotcha. So what's the transition out of that to Jonathan LeVine Gallery? Is that right?
Yeah.
That's the next one? Yes. You went with the name, your name.
Well, what happened was I then moved Tin Man Alley to Philadelphia, and I started doing really well selling work finally after like 6 years. Mm-hmm. I was selling less and less of like collectibles and just more and more of expensive paintings, and the collectibles were just like, what's the point? It's a lot of work and not a lot of money. In New Hope, it worked really well. In Philadelphia, I was in Northern Liberties. It didn't work. And I was selling paintings for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So suddenly, it was a different business.
Yeah.
And my plan had always been to go back to New York. That was always my plan. And I was positioning myself. My dream was to be I was trying to push this whole pop surrealism movement. We didn't call it that then. We used to call it lowbrow. And street art wasn't really even such a thing. We were me and a handful of people were trying to take it to the next level.
Like Juxtapose.
Yeah. But
was Juxtapose out at the time?
Yeah, Juxtapose was out. It used to come out quarterly.
Okay.
All this stuff was very nascent.
That's what introduced me to that. Right. Juxtapose.
That's right.
I'm trying to remember Jeff Soto.
Jeff Soto, yeah. He's I represented.
Yeah. So, because I probably saw that when I was a teenager. Very specifically.
What years were you a teenager?
Well, it's like 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. And it's like it was like a Salvador Dali off ramp, or not off ramp. I mean, it's all
like pop surrealism, and then became street art. And basically, I have had a very long running relationship with that magazine and all the editors and the owners and blah blah blah. And I did become the biggest gallery, the most recognized gallery for that work and for street art, basically in the world. That was my goal. That's what I did. Although I had a different idea about it at the time.
Going into it, you mean?
Yeah, because at the time, all this technology was like Facebook wasn't. I remember when Friendster started, then MySpace, and then it was Instagram. Just like over a period of time, and there was pros and cons to that. But that changed everything drastically till we're in a completely different landscape.
So that was your goal explicitly? That
was my explicit goal. I wanted to be the Leo Castelli of that movement. I was seeing it as, do you know who Leo Castelli is?
No. I know the name, but I don't know.
Leo Castelli was like the art dealer of the 60s who like basically represented like Warhol and Lichtenstein and all the pop artists.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be that in New York City, But I also was like this old school punk rock kid who didn't come from money. So I wanted to be that. I just was like, I didn't really compromise my stuff.
But you have business acumen, and you've had business acumen.
Yes, I always had a lot of business acumen.
So when you were a child, what did you want to be?
When I was a child, I was probably a lot like you, I imagine.
Because I'm a child.
No. No, I'm not saying that at all. Knowing you, who you have a lot of different interests.
Yeah.
You're all around creative.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was. When I was growing up, I was like, quite frankly, I was never that good of an artist. I was very creative and I was a maker, but I wasn't good at drawing and that sort of thing. I was always entrepreneurial.
So what does that look like when you're a child?
For me, I was bouncing all over the place. I mean, I started playing drums when I was 6. I was just playing and I was just considered mediocre. Just making stuff. I used to, for me as a child, my father left when I was 1 and he wasn't around at all. And I didn't really know him. I saw him maybe 3-4 times my whole life. He died when I was 20. And so he wasn't around, and my mother was a single mother, and she got remarried when I was 12. So from those early years, we lived in this apartment complex in the suburb of Trenton called Ewing. And what that looked like for me as a kid, I was a latchkey kid. I go to school, whatever, come home. And I would make stuff. And early on, I was collecting comic books, and I was selling seeds door to door and greeting cards. So back in the 70s, you could go into a comic book, you could open up a comic book, Marvel Comics, and it'd be like, hey, kids, you want to make money? This is how it was. They really trusted you. They'd send you a box of packets of seeds.
Seeds.
Yeah, seeds, like grow tomatoes or all that. Or they would send me boxes of greeting cards. And I literally, because I lived in this big apartment complex, would go around knocking on doors, selling them. And I also started to sew a little and sell my crafts. Or when I would make stuff, and I lived near our apartment, the court that I lived in was near this pool we had in the apartment complex. And I would go in the garbage can. Let me tell you something. I was telling this to my girlfriend. The biggest party for me was, so we have these giant dumpsters, was if somebody had gotten a refrigerator, and you would get a refrigerator box because they were humongous. They're like 6 feet tall, and I'm like 2 feet tall, right? Yeah. I'm a short ass guy to begin with. I was a really short kid. And I'd get this box. I remember I would put it in front of the house if it was the summer. I'd cut a little hole through it, and I'd sell like lemonade or little craft stuff I'd make as people walk by to go to the pool. And then after that, when that box started to get like beat up, then I would use it to slide down hills and things like that. But I would go foraging in the garbage for stuff. I was always just making and selling things. There was no direction. And by the time I got to my teens, when I tried to do a little acting and I just kept playing the drums, I came from a family of musicians, like working class. There were blue collar Italian Americans who worked in General Motors, and my grandfather and my grandmother, and
yeah,
these were not edgy. These were rough people, wonderful people, but rough people. And I just kind of was like always doing something. I was like ADD. It was like making art, making a poster, setting up, like I used to set up these little fairs for muscular dystrophy to raise money and make little, do a little carnival I was just organizing shit. I would do haunted houses in my house. My mother would let me. I was just always organizing shit.
So that's the thing you're best at doing.
Well, you have to understand but the thing is, what I really wanted to be was either a rock star. I wanted to be Ringo Starr, because I was a huge Beatles fan.
Why Ringo specifically?
Because I'm a drummer because of Ringo Starr.
What attracts you to Ringo?
Well, when I was about 6, my cousin Steven, who's still really good, he's like very close to me. He's like my brother, Stephen Baldanzi. He's 5 years older than me. He's a music teacher. He turned me on to the Beatles. He'd play 45s. This is like 1973, maybe 1974. And I fell in love with the Beatles. And between me and my brother, by the time I was probably like 8 and he was 10, my brother's 2, maybe 3 years older than me, we had like every Beatles album. I was obsessed with the Beatles. And I was buying records at 6. The first album I ever bought was a Yellow Submarine because I loved the record cover.
It's a good cover.
Right. And so I was obsessed with the Beatles, and I just was like, I wanted to be a drummer. I can't tell you why, but I just like the drums, you know?
No, that
I'm
makes
still
sense.
drumming. I drum almost every day. And so this was my, I had like sort of eclectic youth, just kind of I didn't play sports. I did race BMX for a little while when I was like 12 or 13. And then when I got into my teens, I was also a dancer, and I was a b-boy. So I used to break dance. I got into sewing. I used to, like, in high school, I became like this master sewer. I'm like really good at crafts. I'll tell you a whole bunch of weird shit about me.
But that stuff, you still play the drums.
Yeah.
But is the rest business at this point?
No, I mean, like, hey, listen, I'm gonna just bounce all over the place here, and this is gonna make no sense to anyone. But like, you and I are both elks.
Elks, yeah, you're a master elk.
I've been like, I'm not a master.
You want to be an exalted ruler one day.
I'm in no rush to be one, and if I'm never one, that'd be okay.
You sure?
Yes.
Where's the ambition? Where's the ambition gone? Actually,
I still have lots of ambition, but if I'm gonna do it, I have to do it right, and I don't have time for that right now. So. Although I'm very active in the Elks, and one of the things I'm doing now, what I've done is I made all sorts of like products for our Elks. And in fact, I've been designing that stuff and making that stuff, like that patch I gave you. I hand sewed a lot of stuff.
All those fezzes, you brought the fez
all those
back.
Fezzes, I hand sewed those fezzes. I hand sewed the patches onto those fezzes at the lodge. And also, if you go there, we have stocking cats. I hand sewed all the patches on those as well. I have a variety of skills. The other thing I used to do. There's too many things that by the time I was always doing stuff, being stimulated. I worked at a hair salon for a long time. People thought I was going to be a hairdresser. Of course, everyone thought I was gay as well.
Well, yeah, you're sewing as well.
Yeah, sewing. And I was like this master sewer. My nickname in high school was Cupcake.
Nice.
It wasn't nice. It was horrible. So mind you, I went to a suburb of Trenton.
Yeah.
Fairly blue collar, predominantly blue collar. And racially mixed. And if you had any money, you sent your kids to some kind of either Catholic school or you sent them off to private school. Well, my parents didn't have any money. So, like, I was like the shortest kid in my class in this very racially, predominantly white and black town. And the kids were rough and they were mean. And I'm tough as a result. But so then I was doing that. I'll try to give you more of this. This is my whole kind of background, creative background. I was trying lots of things. I was like a b-boy, like I said. I, did some theater and stuff. I played the drums on and off throughout high school. And then I finally stopped doing it in school. But then when I discovered punk rock, I started putting out a music magazine, my fanzine. And I was doing that in high school. And I started booking punk rock shows. And I started a little record label. And I was collecting comic books. I was just like kind of all over the place, just like any kid, absorbing everything, listening to hip hop, listening to the punk rock, making stuff, but not necessarily in a traditional way. And so like when I did end up going to college, which I wasn't even going to go, I didn't know what I wanted to do, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. I just knew that I was trying a lot of things and, I was just trying to find my way. It was a different time. And I wasn't sure if I was going to play. I wasn't sure, and I didn't really particularly feel. I was really good at a lot of things, but I was great at nothing. You know what I was great at, and I didn't want to be? Being organized and being a good businessman.
Yeah, I get it.
My mother used to always say to me, as you know, my mother's Italian, but my father's Jewish, and my mother always used to say to me, that's a little Jewish merchant in you, because I was always selling stuff, you know? I could just tell you, like, stories and stories about, like, stuff, all the different influences and peoples in my life and all sorts of interesting I had a very interesting childhood and teenage years.
Right. So being an art collector allows you to, it kind of controls the ADHD in some degree because you can bring in all these different.
But I'm not an art collector.
Sorry, a gallerist.
A gallerist. Yeah. You know what happened was I started to you can't do everything. And
no.
That's when I opened the gallery, I had to make this commitment because I was having that issue at the time. I was like, am I going to keep making art? I'm like, well, I don't really need to do that. Am I going to be in a rock band? I was like, well, I really don't want to do that because I didn't love it enough that I love playing drums and I love doing it on my own terms and playing in my band, which is called Cyclone Static.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it's coming to the Williams Center soon.
That's right.
I hear that.
That's right. And And I really enjoy doing that. Just like I enjoy being at the Elks and making things for the Elks, but I'm not trying to make a living off of it. So as I've matured, but when I opened the gallery at 32, I had to really focus on one thing. And so for a long time, I didn't do anything but that. And
was that fulfilling to kind of focus in?
Sometimes it was, and sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I would never go back to it because it's not fulfilling to me.
It's hard to tell if that multi-pronged approach, which I have as well, is a defect or a strength at times. And sometimes you try to curb it or lean into it.
Well, it depends what your goals are. So for me personally, my goal was to do what I set out to do, and I did it, and I made a lot of sacrifices, huge amounts of sacrifices that I don't think most people would. I don't think, knowing you, that you would, because I just don't think you could have been bothered, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, not for that.
For me, it was about ambition and believing something. I had to learn a lot. I learned a lot in that process. And then I set out to do what I did, and I did it, and I did it to the best of my ability. And I was really unhappy in it for a while, even when it was very successful. And then it stopped being so successful, and it basically got ripped out of my hands, which one of maybe the best things that happened for me. I mean,
what does that mean? Ripped out of your hands?
Oh, it just stopped working, and I kept trying to make it work.
Like the natural kind of appeal to the type of aesthetic went away?
No, the business changed too much, no longer worked. And in order for me to function in that world anymore, I had to compromise myself too deeply, which I didn't want to do. Then it was just really no fun for me.
Was there a day where you encountered the art world? Do you know what I mean by that? Like there's doing business as you were doing before, with the toys and selling a painting, for under 5,000. And then there's the day where you start going above that. Was there any contrast and change to that? Because I noticed some shift when running my gallery, where I started selling things to people who were putting them in shipping containers or whatever, just storage.
Well, what's the art world?
I don't know.
What do you mean by that?
I guess investors, maybe
To be honest with you, I still deal with very big collectors, but they're not investors.
That's good.
They're collectors. I don't really deal with people who are investors and people who are flippers, and I really don't like those people. And all things considered fair and equal, I was pretty pure in my business. I went hard, and I had an amazing run, and probably it was highly unlikely what happened is highly unlikely. I don't know. Part of it was luck. Part of it was I was the right place. I was committed. It was a lot of things. Not to I don't want to undermine
don't diminish.
But I didn't compromise myself often, and I really don't like people like that. I don't like you if you're listening. I can't stand you. I hate those people.
Well, what does it look like? Tell them what it looks like.
Somebody who doesn't really care about the art, and they're just trying to make money, and they're just dealing with that as a commodity. And I don't like that. That's gross.
You think that happens often?
Sure, but I don't deal. That's not part of my life.
Yeah. No, I know.
It's not part of even now. It's not part of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing something out of passion, and the people collected it were passionate about it. And don't get me wrong. Occasionally, I actually deal with other dealers, and at least with them, it's transparent and straight up. There's this sort of what it seems to make me think about. It makes me think of these Wall Street sneaker collector type bros who I cannot stand. I cannot stand that.
So why is it? Is it so? For me, I believe it's largely when.
I think they're unethical.
Well,
gross.
They're also not participants; they're spectators. And if I'm listening correctly to your story,
they're hustlers.
You're participating in the scene,
mm-hmm.
And then it naturally, organically becomes profitable, and you're there at the right moment.
Not as simple as that.
Well, what I'm saying is,
but yes, but no, those
you were participating. You knew the people via.
Those people don't actually care about it. They're just looking at how can I make money. They're just hustlers.
They're on the outside.
They're just hustlers. It's like dealing in stocks.
Yes.
And this is, something I care deeply about. But
you also knew people because you were participating in the scene, no?
You mean like new collectors?
No, I mean like the artists early on. Like,
yeah, like I'm like one of the I'm considered like an OG forefather of pop surrealism street art. Like I'm one of the oldest dealers. Not that I'm not old, I'm 54. But I've been around the longest, me and just a handful of other people. I could name them. I know them all. The scene was this big. That is why, to this day, Shepard Fairey, who you, of course, know who Shepard Fairey is.
Yeah.
We were just emailing today. I could call him right now and be like, hey, Shepard, what's up? He's still my good friend. I work with him a little, but he's a mega rock star.
Yeah.
You know, so like I used to represent him and he got huge. And I still have those relationships with all those people because we all came up together. I've known them all half of my life at least. People like Ron English. I can go to his house anytime. They're always inviting me. Jonathan, when you come up, they're actually my friends. So, yes, I was committed early on, but the scene was this big, and I made a lot of sacrifice. I really believed in it.
It's organic. Did
I ever give you my book?
Which book?
I have a book. There's a book about
You wrote the book?
No, it was written about my gallery.
No, you haven't.
It's called Delusional.
No.
And the reason I'll give it to you, and the reason it's called Delusional is because people said I was delusional. Because
who's the people?
Well, Carla McCormick called me delusional. He actually wrote the foreword for this.
Who the hell is that?
Carla McCormick was a senior editor of Paper Magazine, and he's also a very well-known art critic, curator, and music critic. He's very well-known. Turns out he's a very good friend of mine. And I met him really early on when I was starting, and he wrote this article about me calling me delusional. Which
facet of you is delusional in the article? The idea that you could commodify that?
That I could commodify the artwork that I was in at the time, this artwork. Nobody thought you could. And I kept at it.
Yeah.
For years before I started.
What was the turning point?
I think the particular turning point specifically, and I always use this as an example, was probably the first year I was into my gallery in New Hope. Now, mind you, I'd already been doing at this at like 5-6 years at this point. I put up a website. I had some guy build me a website, and I put an art online. Now, up until that point, people don't buy art online. I put art online. This guy emails me from Texas and buys a $3,000 painting from this artist, Glenn Barr. And that's when it started.
Interesting. I hated the fact that 95% of what I sold was online because I developed no relationships with actual collectors or people. And so they would just get shipped. I would get shipped in, out. I would store things. Of course, I'm in Rutherford, New Jersey, running a gallery. That's going to happen. But that was not human enough to sustain me. You know, I would love to actually know the person.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I am the total opposite.
Really? Well, maybe we experienced the opposing.
Yeah, because I got sick of it and I used to sell so much work. I didn't want to deal with my collectors. And because you had too many collectors and they were time suck. And if you'd be surprised, the people who spend the most money with you want the least amount of time. People who spend $500 with you want 3 hours of your time. And I was peopled out. I used to hide.
Well, are you an introvert or extrovert?
I'm extroverted, but it got to be too much. I had 2 spaces in New York. I had 10 employees, and for 12 years at least, every show would be like wall to wall. You couldn't walk, and people were constantly hustling me, and I didn't like it, and it made me anxious and insecure, and I just didn't want to deal with it. It was what I always wanted, and then I got it, and I'm like, this kind of sucks. Of course. And I would hide, and I would drink half a bottle of whiskey.
When did it go downhill?
Probably what kind of I'd say went downhill where we stopped selling as much. People were still showing up.
Sure.
But work wasn't selling. The whole market was changing. It was becoming more difficult. It was around 2015.
Was that when you were in Mana Contemporary?
No, I was still in New York.
Is Projects what was Mana Contemporary?
Yes.
That's late, and that's a short-lived period, right?
Yeah, I was in Mana for like 2 years, and then like I could just see it just wasn't working anymore. And
is that an aesthetic thing or a technological thing?
it was more of a technological thing. So basically, my whole take on the gallery industry is that it doesn't make sense. It's a kind of a longer conversation.
I would agree from what little I know.
So it finally got to the point where it's like, and when you have employees and you leases and things like that, you can't just go like, I'm done. You can't just walk away. You're stuck in leases. You walk away from a lease, you get sued, blah, 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 blah. And also it's very hard to be like, this isn't working. You take it as a huge failure. So, eventually it just didn't work anymore. And then I took a break from it.
Is it over? Would it be accurate to say it's over?
What do you mean? What's over?
Well, if we have these 3 chapters, right, loosely speaking, is there a 4th?
4 chapters. Yeah, 3, 4, 1, 2.
I'm using names to be the chapters.
I'm in another chapter, and it's a transitional chapter. But I don't have my end goal. I do have an end goal. My end goal is to, and I'm kind of doing it. I mean, right after I closed the gallery, COVID happened, so that kind of changed everything. But my end goal, so basically I represent one artist. I still do online shows. I do a lot of what's called secondary market sales.
Mm-hmm.
I work on this project and that project. My whole thing is like, if there's money in my account, enough money in my account, and I don't have to bust my ass, then I don't take large unnecessary risks unless I really believe in them. I do a lot less. I do what I want to do, and I just try to be happy. I kind of feel like I'm semi-retired. I am working on some projects. For example, like I represent an artist named Kum Fernando, who's doing like a lot of big things. Like, honestly, I could work with one artist and make more money than I ever made working with 30 artists because the overhead is less, etc. You can have one really successful artist that's doing very well.
Yeah.
And I'm also working with, I have a partner, sort of, so to speak, who's also a very well-known curator. His name's Christian Strike, and he was responsible for curating this traveling exhibition called Beautiful Losers, which is a sort of...
There's also a documentary,
There's a documentary and a book, yeah. So my friend Christian, sort of, he's the guy behind that. And he's curating a Beautiful Losers 2.
Oh, yeah, there's 2 of them?
There's going to be a second one. And I'm the co-curator.
Nice.
So we'll see where that goes. But I'm at a good point in my life where I don't have to deal with the stresses, and I kind of sort of get to make choices about how I want to live. And because I'm middle class, I don't need to make a shit ton of money. And because I don't come from a lot of money, that's fine. I'm not focused on material things as much as one might think I would be.
So early on, you're focused on the ambition and executing the goal. The goal was done. I'm curious, as you get older, does the ambition just go down, or does it just mutate into more kind of smaller goals?
Yeah, you know what? I think that this is specific to people. For me, ambition's about ego.
Only?
No.
Is it a negative?
For me, for my goal, was a lot about ego and
in a negative sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. And self-esteem and needing validation and all those things. And so I regret, like, I don't say I don't regret anything in my life, but I don't really regret a lot.
Sure.
I mean, you kind of like you're like, Jesus, I wish I knew that, but like I wouldn't have really, I never did anything that I felt was unethical, and like, geez, I shouldn't have done that. It was more like, that was a dumb choice, but I didn't know, and I had to do it. And if I hadn't done it, I'd always be like, should have done it.
You should always do it.
So, but you get beat up that way. You get like severely injured that way. Yeah. And you have to be able to recover from that. So I'm in a different phase of my life. It's more like, Don't to sound all goofy and shit, but that's
Oh,
more
yeah, that's good, guys.
spiritual pursuits, you know.
No.
So,
In what sense is it spiritual?
no, I mean, like, I'm more spiritual in terms of my approach to life. You know, just
what does that mean?
That means,
as opposed to material?
well, I was never that materialistic, but like, not looking for outside, and so much on the outside for people
Sure.
to tell me I'm okay, but looking on the inside and having good, just not chasing notoriety, which I think a lot of creative people
Sure.
do. And so for me, that's, and my ambition is, and I was so hungry. I got hurt, you know, but my ambition now is to, there's nothing I'm not all excited about that I want to chase it like that and take those huge risks. And, you know, without being very explicit about all that, a lot of that stuff, which I won't on this, you know, you can get injured.
Sure.
In a variety of ways. You can get injured emotionally, you can get injured spiritually, you can get injured financially. You can even get injured physically in a sense of what it could do to your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had all that, and I mean, I did the best job that I could, so I don't really regret that. I'm like, I don't fucking do that again. Like, no way. There's no point. And I'm lucky because everything I did allows me to sort of, it's allowed me to sort of sit back, lick my wounds, and reassess. Now, I don't know where that goes. I'm just finding my way. I'm kind of organic in the way I do things. I became a gallerist by accident. I didn't set out to be like,
Sure.
I'm going to be an art gallerist.
I get that. Yeah, same.
Never.
Same.
I sort of fell into it, got pushed into it in a way. And so now I'm just kind of still doing it. I'm like I was when I was a kid, trying lots of different things, except the difference now is I actually make a living doing it. So that's fun. So I try to stay right there. And occasionally I'll do big things that get attention,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not my focus. Now, if I had a lot of money,
what would you even do?
if I had a lot of money, I'd buy a lot of real estate and I'd set up sort of like an arts complex or something. I'd find that really fulfilling. Although, there's
are you a person of service or
Yes.
you are?
Yes.
So, for all your egoic flaws, I mean, it's not like you did something horribly criminal. You channeled it in a
No,
fairly,
of course not. Why would it? No, of course not. Did it sound like it by what I was saying?
No, the opposite. But sometimes, like, I think the ego can be good. Like, you channeled a youthful ego into helping your friends succeed and build their lives, and in the process, you built your life. That's a good thing.
Yeah, but it's hard to have that perspective when to always have to have that perspective when all sorts of kind of horrible things happen along the way. It's like, truth is, a lot of horrible things happen along the way.
Well, that's why you need that interiority that religious and spiritual practice allows, because the outside world is brutal. And if you don't have that, it's really hard.
Saying that to you, I don't know if that's the thing with you. Like, my best friends are like not spiritual at all, and I don't really talk about it very much, to be honest with you. But it is what carries me.
But how do you build it? So with religion, you have explicit practices typically, right? There's kind of a program to how you're going to get there. But I do think acts of service are something that tends to build it.
Well, I come from a family of acts of service, and so my business to some extent was an act of service, although I was getting recognized for it. So there was not completely, obviously not 100% act of service. It was actually surprising by the amount of recognition initially when I was like, what the hell? I didn't expect this. And it was really fucking fun. I have created my own spiritual path. I come from a very spiritual family. I've been fortunate, not to say my family's perfect in any capacity, and that our lives have been easy and our relationships have been easy. But my mother, I grew up in a very Catholic family, and my mother was somebody who bounced around in different faiths, searching for something. I mean, she married a Jewish guy. She dated a bunch of Jewish guys. She finally got remarried. She married my stepfather, who is Presbyterian. So I was raised in the Catholic Church, and my grandmother was very much involved in that, and I was like an altar boy and
Yeah.
very traditional. And then my mother would send me to Jewish summer camp. She was like, "Well, you're half Jewish," although I wasn't bar mitzvah or anything like that. And then we sort of observed that a little bit when I was a kid, and then half my family's still Jewish. That's not something that goes away. And then my mother started taking me to the Presbyterian church, and my mother was always deeply in search, very spiritually looking to be connected to her faith. And because we were struggling growing up with my father not being around, my mother being, quite frankly, being emotionally not so stable, her struggling financially, us not having a lot of help with that, my brother and I having emotional issues, like worrying about going to foster care or getting electricity turned off or something like that, or just like my brother, we were, not only were we like poor and little, we were different.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made it all very difficult. So there was a lot of struggle and low self-esteem and getting bullied and all that shit. So my mother instilled in me at a very young age this belief in a higher power and having faith.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't necessarily believe, I wouldn't call myself a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
although I'll sit around and talk to Christians all day. I got no beef with Christians. To be honest with you,
There's no reason to. Yeah.
No, a lot of people are like, I have like a lot of really good friends. I have a lot of friends who are spiritual and religious people, and I have massive amounts of. I have some of the best people I met in my life were in the church.
Well, it's helpful to go to a place that tells you how to behave every week. Like
that's not really so much what I got out of that for me personally.
No, but I think in general that's a good function, right? Like it's hard to be a good person. It's an uphill battle. It's easy to fall into horrible behavior. And if you go to a place where you're listening to someone say you should probably not do this and do this, I think that's helpful.
Yeah, when you grow up with ethics, I also grew up with a grandmother, and her mother was screaming at me, so I knew what that was. But like more ethics, being, and also through people around me, I actually had good role models of people who were ethical, tried to be ethical, were ethical, honest, hardworking people. But also, we just talk about this deeper spirituality. It's also stuff that, fortunately for me and my mother continued her spiritual journey. It's something that I always talked to her about as I explored other, different religions and things like that and philosophy. So like she and I can always come back to the same place. We pretty much agree. I don't necessarily, and my mother's not this dogmatic Christian either.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So like she doesn't care if I believe in Jesus Christ or not.
Right.
She doesn't care. We just have this overall spiritual belief as a whole in terms of how the universe works.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a longer conversation, but that's really what gets me through. And that's what I really stay much more focused on these days.
Okay. Because, it's a question of, obviously you're very involved with the Elks.
That's right.
And you play in Cyclone Static. But what does a typical day look like? You live not too far from me.
That's right. I live about 3/4 of a mile. My typical day is as boring as fuck.
You hide in bushes and spy on me?
Mm-mm. Oh, that would be
my beautiful life.
That would be too much work. I get up at 10 o'clock, maybe. I go to bed at 2.
What are you doing? With all that time?
Well, I go to bed at 2 and I get up at 10, so I sleep 8 hours.
What are you doing from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.?
I'm getting there, okay? I usually wake up, I drink like a pot of coffee throughout the day. I sit in front of my computer. I read the news.
Jesus Christ, don't do that.
For at least an hour a day. And then I hop on my computer and I answer emails, and I do, part of my job is just doing the nuts and bolts of admin stuff, which I hate. Part of my life, it's different every day, is being on yesterday I was on a phone call with this couple who represent the artist Winston Smith. He's the guy who did all the Dead Kennedys record covers. I take a lot of calls. I talk to people all over the world, Zoom meetings, this, that, and the other thing. Just a lot, I sell stuff. I put stuff up on Instagram and Facebook. I create content. I have some people who work for me that I meet with. And and I don't leave the house. And every so often, I will go over to my storage space in Jersey City and do something there, pack something, move something around. And occasionally I go to an art event. And at some time around later in the afternoon, I might take a nap.
Wow.
And then I go downstairs and I beat on my drums for like 45 minutes. I might get on the treadmill and run for a couple miles. And
you may or may not go to the Elks.
I may go hang out at the Elks. My life's pretty quiet these days, like it used to be very, very, very different.
Like a hedonistic, like you were a party animal?
I was, but it was hedonistic, but I also I worked nonstop. I ran 2 galleries.
Work hard, play hard.
And I used to travel 3 months of the year, and I was constantly going to art events and being seen and, all that crap that you do.
So having lived that life, what advice can you give to all those artists out there?
In regards to what, for what? In what regards?
I don't know. Give me something. Give me some wisdom from
I always say
those years.
I always say, try to be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself.
Come on.
Seriously.
I won't take it.
I always say, be kind to yourself. That's always what I tell young people coming up. It depends who they are.
What does that mean? Explain it. It's just...
Don't beat yourself up. Don't be too hard on yourself.
I mean, for me, the only way I've ever gotten better is kind of brutality.
Yeah, but, beating yourself up isn't productive. That doesn't mean you can't push yourself either.
Oh, you mean like really?
Yeah, just like be kind to yourself. Doesn't mean you shouldn't work hard, but don't beat yourself up. It's counterproductive. Take your time. Don't expect, you're not, egos are fragile and hurtful, and they're just
if you make mistakes,
bruised.
Move on.
Yeah, so I think just go out there, do your thing, have fun, do it because you love it. Don't get try to get too caught up in that game. So
you're what did you say, 54?
Mm-hmm.
How do you imagine the rest of your life playing out?
It's hard because I would like the rest of my life to play out.
Sure, same thing, yeah.
It never plays out the way you imagine it. So
I know, but you got to imagine it, otherwise you're not even anywhere close.
That I stay healthy and thin-ish.
Finish.
I won't, because I lost a bunch of weight.
I don't know.
You used to know. Didn't you know me when I was heavier? It's like 40 pounds heavier.
I can't see that kind of thing.
Healthy and thin-ish, stimulated, financially secure, and continually being able to do the things I want to do. Eventually, I move down the shore and keep snowbirding. I'm going to go move to Asbury Park. Keep playing music. It would be great if my band took off a little and we got some notoriety from that.
Hey, you stick with me. Anything's possible.
Do a little touring with that. Basically, just keep doing all these creative things. And I like to collaborate with people and just do cool creative collaborations and just never know what they are and just do what I want, kind of, and just keep going.
You ever imagine where you'll die? How you'll die? You gonna be on Asbury on the beach, laying, relaxing?
I hope I die like my great-grandfather.
How'd he die?
The story goes that he put on a suit, he ate a banana, he came downstairs, he sat on the bench, he fell asleep, and he didn't wake up.
Like a cat or something.
He was like 96.
Yeah, you should think about that.
I would love to die that way. I'd love to have my health. I love not to have any physical issues. And just go to sleep one day and not wake up.
Alone, or is there someone watching you die?
Oh, well, it'd be nice if I had a partner. I have a girlfriend right now, but...
A cat is on your lap? No, you're not a pet person?
No, I don't mind having a dog if I had someone
with me.
No, too much responsibility. I traveled, I bounce around too much and stuff.
Yeah, you were in Florida for what?
Last year was 2 months. The year before was 4.
Pitbull concerts and whatnot?
I'm going to Mexico next month.
Okay.
I just set it up today. I'm going to Tulum.
Oh my God.
For 3 weeks.
Yeah, I've been there. It's nice.
What was that? Oh my God.
No, I just am thinking back to where I was, There's a beach, there's a globe flag, there's naked people with a little child hugging, there's people taking ayahuasca, and me just observing.
Well, I rented a place.
And fired, some
outside
fire
of
shit.
things a little bit.
Yeah.
Like a mile from like the action, like a mile and a half from the beach, like a nice place.
No, it's nice. It's nice.
And I'd just be quiet. I don't have to participate in that.
No, you don't.
So, and I don't know that I will be. So I'm just going there to get some sun.
Yeah, I get it.
Because I don't do well in the winter.
Nor do I, but I try to stay grateful for the kind of explosion that occurs when you get out of it. Like, I kind of miss being in school and watching the clock, like high school, and just being like, God damn, when's it going to end? Because my life is very, I build my own structure.
Yeah,
you don't get the same release when it's your structure, but when someone's imposing like a prison sentence, you explode out the gate, That's fun. I don't miss it. I try not to miss anything. I'm not a nostalgic person.
Well, you actually have a very similar life than I do in that way, because you just kind of make your thing and you do your thing. You're just moving through life, dude.
It's not a hip. No. It's not a hippie thing. It's that potentially we're so unacceptable. For me, I just never liked being employed by someone whose direction I didn't believe in. And the fact is, I don't believe in anyone's direction but my own in some sense, right? So like, you're going to have to sacrifice, you're going to have to work harder to serve your very sensitive inability.
Well, you're creative and you're an entrepreneur. So I'd say you're very similar to me.
That's a cool cross section.
Yeah.
There's like a douchey connotation with entrepreneur, but to me, I love it.
I know tons of great entrepreneurs. I know a lot of artist entrepreneurs, and
they are, if they want to be or not, they are.
And quite honestly, almost all financially successful artists are entrepreneurs.
Well, I'll tell you, the artists I wanted to deal with over and over again were quasi business people because they had their shit together.
That's right.
So reality is the best artists. I know some great artists who are basically insane, and I didn't want to deal with that.
That's a whole other podcast. We just have that podcast.
Just be organized, get the work in on time. Don't email me the next day about how the work's terrible and you want me to send it back. Yeah. Just be remotely stable.
There's people that are creative that make work, but that doesn't mean that they can function within the structure of the, if you want to call it, commercial art world.
It's hard.
And so people have seen too many movies where they're like, the artist is just painting in their studio and they can just be ever they want and they're just great and self-absorbed, and somebody just comes and sells their painting. Everybody wants to believe that. That does not do creative people it's a disservice. And what does it even mean to be an artist? And that's a whole other, like, I'm on Facebook and I have like 5,000 friends and probably 4,000 of them are artists. So I'm in a
echo chamber.
A total echo chamber of crybaby artists.
Yeah.
And their self-importantness and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, why are you more important than a plumber? But you're also supposed to be woke too and so aware, but yet you think you're more important than a plumber. It's like, give me a break.
There is a weird... Yeah, I don't even want to get into that, like the things I started to see emerge, the politics of the art world are rather uninteresting. I'd rather be around plumbers and contractors all day.
That's why I'm an elk.
Yeah. So people out there should be elks. I mean,
have you
they're just
elks
great people. No, because I never interviewed an elk, but the way I talk about it in the practical sense, it's like walking into a bar where everyone likes you already. That's a weird feeling. It's almost surreal. And they're there for the right reasons. They're good people. They're trying to serve people who need it. And it's really not complicated. I don't know how they even have a bad rap in any sense. Well, anyone can make a bad rap about anything or anyone.
That's true.
But they're benevolent and they protect. And I'm very happy to be an elk. I could be a much better elk. I hope one day you're an exalted ruler because
I'm just not. It's a big. Put it to you this way. I'll say this: if I suddenly come into a humongous sum of money, where I could take a year to be the ER, then I would.
And you would put your full energy into it then.
That's right. And I already put a ton of energy into it.
Yeah.
Tons of it, because it's fun for me and it's easy.
Yeah.
That's why I participate.
Yeah, it's an interesting... When did you join? How many years ago?
It's only been like a little over 2 years.
How did you come to do that?
Don't you remember it was a conversation that me, you, and Pete had.
I know, but this is a podcast.
So you, me, and Pete, your friend, our mutual friend Pete, at the time, was like 3 years ago. Is this podcast going on too long?
No. Let the people decide that.
I had just broken up with my girlfriend, and I was no longer working. That's when I started working from home exclusively. And I've been living in this town for, I'm in this town 18 years, so however many years that was, 15 years or something. And I was like, let me get more involved in town and what's right here and try to develop some relationships. And because I never really hung out in this town. I would just go to work, go in the city, work in the city, party in the city, etc., etc. So I wanted to throw a dance party, and we would hang out. We'd hang out in this house.
Yeah.
Have some beers, chit chat, talk about music, whatever. I was like, let's throw a cool dance party. And I'd been driving by the Elks Lodge the whole time I lived in this town, but never really thought much of it. And I think we had talked about it, and I was around there, and I ran inside, and I looked in, and I was like, I saw what it looked like. I'm like, cool. And then, not much soon after that, I met some people who were members there, and I went to an event. And I was like, this is cool. This is fun. I was like, and I thought, I could put on, and it's before you opened the Williams Center.
Yeah.
I was like, I could put on punk rock shows or dance parties or whatever. And how much does it cost to join? They're like $70
a year.
And I'm like, what do I got to do? And they're like, you have to say you believe in God, a God, doesn't matter what God, could be Lemmy.
There's some really important stipulations coming up right here.
So you have to say you believe in God. A lot of people don't like that, but nobody stipulates what that God is.
I think it's a fair rule.
And then you also have to, you have to be an American citizen.
Sure.
And the last thing, and it really depends on how you feel you apply. If you apply online, it asks you if you plan on overthrowing the
U.S. government. Yeah.
But if you do the paperwork, which they printed out many years ago and it's floating around all over the place, you have to say you're not a communist. Now, this is like 1950s, like Eisenhower.
McCarthyism.
I'm sorry. Like this whole, when they changed a lot of things. So,
look, I'm in the middle of reading a book about this topic, and I think it's a fair thing to ask of people in America at the time.
So those are the three things. And you become a member. You pay your $70, $80 a year, whatever your lodge costs. And if you want to do something, you can hang. And otherwise, you just show up and you drink, and that's it. Nobody pushes you to do anything. But so that's what happened. That's why I joined, just because I was like, it'd be cool to do some parties and stuff.
But why did it have such an impact?
Well, for me personally, I had this obsession for the longest time with like secret societies, and particularly the Shriners.
Right. That's why you like the Fez so much.
I was really into the Fez, and I saw the lodge used to have a Fez. And at some point in my life, I was like, I'm going to become a Shriner, which is a Freemason, but they're like the party Freemasons. Because I love Fezes. I'm a hat guy. All these artists I work with would always paint Shriners, and I just like this idea of like this secret society. And should also mention that a lot of people don't realize is the Elks are for men and women, and most other things like the Masons, they're not. They're just for men. There's auxiliary groups for women, but
I forget the name.
But in any case,
yes, Elks have two genders.
It was just really loose, and I love the history of it. I started doing the research, and it was originally started in New York by 15 theater people.
Drama nerds.
Yeah, that's right, drama nerds, and they were called the Jolly Corks. And I was like, this is so cool. And I just realized the potential, which is such a much longer conversation of what the Elks can be. And the fact that they are this benevolent, protective order of the Elks, and that they're basically, you can go in there and raise money and do anything you want for anyone. I mean, they have their core things they do, but as you as a member can raise money for whatever you want. And I like the idea that it's a non-political organization, a non-religious organization. You're not
also
supposed to talk
non-bureaucratic. you can't talk about business.
You're not supposed to talk about business. You're not supposed to talk about religion. You're not supposed to talk about politics. And right now, we really need a neutral place to go.
Yeah.
And so all these things, it was kind of like reminding me a little bit like my mom dragging me off to the Presbyterian church when I was a kid for community. They had this really great community there, but without all the religion, and then you could booze. So but it as a whole, the whole Elks organization, which I could talk about ad nauseum, has got so much incredible potential. There's 2,000 lodges in the country. And I think there's roughly 2 million members. And if you join one lodge, you can go to any lodge. It's a great place if you're a young creative or any kind of person. You can it's a great place to do anything in there. If you want to do life drawing classes in there, if you want to put on a show, an art show, whatever, that space, you can do whatever you want in it.
I think, in any
all
community. That's true. And it helps disabled people and veterans mostly.
So that's most
our lodge.
That's right. Now,
or all
lodges focus on veterans, children with special needs, and youth programs. But as a member of the Elks Lodge, you could be like, I want to focus on, helping dogs with 3 legs.
One, even better.
One or whatever. You could bring other things. I have
the
pliable.
zine. I got to show you the zine that I was working on.
About a dog with 3 legs.
No, Elks. It's just Elks paraphernalia from eBay and everything.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
different. The aesthetic history, or
beautiful
of the Elks. That's what I was collecting.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's beautiful.
It's crazy. Different regions, different signage, different belt buckles. We recommend it. You're not too cool to be an Elk.
You should do a whole episode on the Elks
with Mike. I mean, you are the Elk. You are the this is an arts and music podcast.
That's right. We could do an Elk, but my dream for the Elks is that creatives get involved with it.
My dream for the Elks is that it has a little more of a clear identity in its programming. It returns to I imagine it was very potent early on when those drama nerds, you can feel it with the ceremony. There was a clear vision of poetry. I don't know if it was tongue in cheek or theatrical or sarcastic. When you go through it, it's hard to tell. But I feel like it's lost some of its clarity because, what's the average age? 65?
61, 62.
Yeah, it needs... It's of all the organizations to be suspicious of or institutions, this is not one, the Elks.
Well, maybe that's for you to do. Maybe that's your job.
I mean, I think one day, The
thing about the Elks is it's pliable. The Elks represents if you go to different lodges, it's going to be different.
I've actually never been to a different one.
The hipster lodge in New Jersey, the South Orange Elks Lodge. I hang out there all the time.
You haven't been?
I know. I hang out there all the time.
Oh, really? What does it mean? What does it mean to be a hipster elk?
It's it's full of youngish people, more probably closer to 40 are into music and stuff. They have a rainbow flag outside. And the ER is this guy, Dan, he's 38 now. And he plays in a rock band and I don't know. It's
I'll check it out.
It's pretty great. They throw fun parties. Literally, don't get me wrong, I love my lodge, but that lodge is a blast.
All right.
It's a fun lodge.
I'll check it out. Check it out. If you're around South Orange, New Jersey.
But you can't go into an Elks Lodge unless you're with another elk.
Or the secret
Or you
signal.
Are an elk. Now, and every elk can bring in
12?
9 people.
9?
Yeah, so you're always a party when you're hey, if you're with your friends, you'd be cool. You're hey, come on.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty cool. You got any jokes for me? I tend to end it with a joke.
No, I don't.
You're not a jokester?
No.
Really?
A joke?
You seem like a man who would have a...
No, I'm silly and I make jokes, but I say stupid stuff.
Contextual.
Yes, exactly. But I don't really have a joke.
That's all right.
You want to tell one?
No, it's not about me. It's about you. This podcast. One day, you can interview me.
What's this podcast called?
I can't tell you that yet. Yeah. Sorry.
So yeah, man. That's all I got.
That's your life. That's your whole goddamn life.
That's a little bit of it.
I feel like we covered it all. You're currently in a band?
Cyclone Static.
Uh-huh. You got any shows coming up?
We don't, but you know what we do have? I'll tell you. We have a 4-song EP coming out.
Uh-huh.
And that'll be released in April, which I'm very excited about. And the title of the EP
Go ahead.
is called Cave Pop. And the subtitle is Dance Songs for Primitive People.
Wow. And where can they find that?
Well, when it comes out, it'll be on all streaming services.
All of them?
You know, that'd be Spotify, Apple Music, whatever is out there. It'll also, you can look us up on our Instagram account, our Facebook account, and also on, what's the other music?
TikTok.
No TikTok. Who does Mike work for?
Fucking SoundCloud.
Also, no, it's not Sound. No, you know what? I mean,
he works for SoundCloud.
He does work for SoundCloud. We don't have stuff on SoundCloud. It's Bandcamp. It'll be on.
And you got any shows coming up or no?
Right now, no, because I'm going away. But we should probably have something in March and April.
I mean, I'm trying to work with US Chaos right now, but it's taking some time.
Yeah,
it's all right.
You should have him come up here.
We'll get there. Oh, I don't even know him, but I would talk to him. Jack Gibson,
the
calling him out.
Do you know about US Chaos?
I don't at all.
They were a legendary old school North Jersey punk rock band. I saw them play when I was 16 years old at City Gardens in Trenton, which was this big famous punk rock music club, open up for this famous British band, 999. And the funny thing is, Cyclone Static opened up for 999 4 or 5 years ago as well.
So how much longer are you going to drum?
As long as I can.
Yeah, how do you keep those arms in shape?
You just play all the time.
Yeah?
Yeah, you should play. You should sit down and play at least 3 days a week for like 25 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you got more time. I mean, I don't know.
It's about your muscles. Like, I sit down. I'll play for at least a half an hour. I try to play 45 minutes.
You got a whole house, no one to bother you.
That's right.
That I've never seen.
Yeah, you should come by my house sometime. I've been meaning to have you guys over. I have my man cave downstairs. I got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
A man cave? You own the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I mean,
cave pop? Is that where you make the cave pop?
No, it's not. We played. I don't practice it. I practice my drums in the house, but I won't have a whole band. It's too loud. But the idea with cave pop, I think I have the exact same version of that hat. The idea of cave pop was my band is sort of very 90s sounding grunge, right? And while we were playing this band, I was playing what I felt were very tribal beats, but also very dancey beats.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept feeling like we were cavemen.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the time, I was listening a lot to this band, Idols, the drummer plays these really primal.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, this reminds me of caveman pop. So I was going to go with caveman pop. My friends' kids were like, no, go with cave pop.
Cave pop is better, yeah.
It's like K-pop.
I get it.
We're riffing on it.
Yeah.
But so then, it might be like, oh, is this a dance album? Because it's dance songs for primitive people. But it's like grunge is cave pop, essentially.
Yeah.
If you think
you find it in a cave, I think.
It's just another term you could use for it. So I decided, I thought, it would be a good title to give the writer something to write about.
And in respect to the latest Jonathan LeVine projects, still called that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Where would that be found?
Oh, www.jonathanlevineprojects.com. You can look up my website. You find us on Instagram.
And what are you working on?
The site changes slowly. Right now, I'm working on releasing. Next month I'm doing an online exhibition with Winston Smith.
Okay.
The guy who did the Dead Kennedys record cover.
He's the Pettibone of the Dead Kennedys.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly right. He's a very historically significant guy.
It's a great logo.
Yeah. And he's done other people like Green Day and lots of stuff, but, and stuff for the New Yorker, blah, blah, blah. But then after that, I am releasing 4 sculptures by this artist, Kum Kum Fernando, I represent. And right after that, he was commissioned by Coachella to do 3 70-foot tall sculptures. So we'll probably release some stuff in conjunction with that.
Kum Kum Fernandez.
Yeah, with a K. K-U-M. He is Sri Lankan, but he lives in Vietnam.
Right on.
So that's the projects immediately. My public out-facing projects that I'm working on, public out-facing, because there's always stuff going on behind the scenes.
In the background.
That's right.
Like Elks.
Elk stuff. Well, I tell you what, I don't know the Elks are going to hear this. I didn't mention this, but I'm trying to start a company making cool Elks swag.
That sounds illegal.
It's not.
That sounds like business.
Yes, as long as it's not like under my name.
What do you mean? So you're doing Elks?
Then you get. I shouldn't talk about this too much, but basically you get.
This is top secret.
You get licensing through them.
Really?
Yeah.
But don't they have strict graphic design restrictions?
Pretty loose about it.
That's good. That sounds cool to me.
But you have to get licensing for it.
You got to rise up the Elks.
That's what I'm trying to do.
You got to bring them back up.
That's right.
I don't know when the peak of the Elks was, but
it's probably like peak of the Elks was probably like 1920s, 1930s, 40s.
Makes sense.
The peak of what they call the golden age of fraternal organizations was like the mid 1800s to the the mid 1900s. That was the golden age of the Elk of all those organizations prior to television and all that.
Yeah, when people went out and did shit.
Yeah, they had to actually see each other face to face.
Pre World War I, probably.
That's right.
Yeah.
But even World War II, I mean, this lodge was banging up until the 80s and even the 90s.
Yeah, we got to work on it.
You got to show up, bro.
I know.
You know, as a matter of fact, when I'm done here, I think I'm going to go to the Elks Lodge.
Who's bartending?
No clue. It is Wednesday night. Could be a variety of people. Could be Jimmy.
All right, maybe.
Could be Murph. Could be Donna.
Maybe some of the listeners will meet you there.
That's right.
What's the address?
What is it? Something Ames Avenue? This isn't live, is it? No.
No, we don't even know.
It's Ames Avenue.
But we'll see you there.
Yeah, we'll see you at the Elks Lodge. Moo. What's the Elks loud? What do they make? They make some noise. Some weird noise.
Yeah. That's it.
Thanks for listening. Music by Dory Bavarsky and Mingja Chen. Next up, we have Matlock.